Hi everyone, and thank you all for joining our webinar today. Really excited to have this amazing panel that you can see ready to share their insights on sustainability in events. We're going to start with some quick introductions because we want to get straight into the discussion. But just so everyone watching knows, this is being recorded. So, and it'll be sent around and put on our YouTube. So if there's anything that you want to go back to, you will be able to. Hopefully by the end of this webinar, you'll be able to take away some inspiration for your own events and think about the ways that you can add some sustainable practices into the own events that you run. So to kick things off, I'd love for everyone to tell us a little bit more about who they are and how they're involved in events and why sustainability is a key part of their event's mission. Mark, would you be happy to start us off and give a brief introduction to yourself and Thorrington Theatre?
Absolutely, thank you, Rio, and thank you very much for having us on the webinar today. It's a real pleasure and lovely to be here. So I'm Mark, and I'm here representing Thorrington Theatre. Now, the picture you can see in the background is, my other business's office in London. Now that's of no interest at all, but what I'd like to show now is the website of Thorrington Theatre. So if you can see that, can you give me a thumbs up, Rio, if you can see it? Yeah, that's looking good. So Thorrington Theatre is an open air theatre in the woodlands in Suffolk, just near the Suffolk coast. And we're in our third season. And it came about by a process of great good fortune. So my wife and I got the farm here 5 years ago in 2018, and we're very sustainable in our outlook. We're growing organic nuts, cob nuts, walnuts, and chestnuts. We planted about 3,000 nut trees as well as other trees. And the farm that we're on in Thorrington, hence the name of the theatre, used to be part of the Thorrington estate. And in the Second World War, Thorrington Hall was used by the army for various purposes. And there was a radar station near there, and it got bombed. None of the bombs hit, but a number of the bombs landed in the woodlands around the hall, and one of them landed right there, effectively in the center of the stage. So when we got the farm, we noticed that there was this marvelous amphitheater shaped, depression in the ground, and it turned out this was indeed from a bomb during the Second World War. And people on the farm had talked for the last 20 years about, wouldn't that make a great theatre? And my wife and I have to say it's mostly my wife Lindy, who's the driving force, said, if not, why not? And if not now, when? And so we set about building the theatre. And we've tried to do that in line with our general views, in as sustainable a way as we possibly can. So you can see the theatre there. We didn't move any earth, so that not 1 cubic yard of earth was moved. The seating and the stage are all built out of wood. 90% of the wood was chopped down on the farm from a point about 100 yards to the right of what you can see. I say chopped down. Some of you may be familiar with the word coppicing, and coppicing is an ancient technique for woodland management, and for certain trees, types of trees, most importantly chestnut and hazel is very good, but others as well, even oak it works, but chestnut and hazel are amazing. If you chop the tree down and leave the stump, then in the following spring you'll get little buds around the edge of the stump, and they'll become shoots. And then what you have is if it's a big tree, you have the massive root system from the tree feeding these tiny little shoots, and they grow literally like rockets. So we chopped down the wood in 2019, coppiced it. And so that's, 4 years ago now, or 3.5 years ago. And I wish I could show you, but if you go to where we coppiced the wood, the shoots are now as thick as my wrist and up to about 18, 20 foot high in the course of 3.5 years. So it's an incredibly sustainable method of woodland management. It's having your cake and eating it. It's chopping down the wood to make timber, and you're left with the tree. It's just amazing. So
amazing. Thanks so much, Mark, for that introduction. It's just really great. It's such a beautiful theatre, and to know that it's all laid with sustainable and local wood as well. Reducing your carbon footprint is really inspiring. I'd like to pass over to Hannah now, who equally inspiring, but from a completely different sort of side of the business than a theatre. Hannah, can you give us a bit more insight into what you do, please?
Of course. Thanks so much, Rio. Thanks everyone for giving up an hour of your time to come listen to us speak today. I really appreciate it. I've been working in events for over 20 years. I actually started running my own events at uni because the busy student club night was on a night that I worked in a restaurant. So I didn't get to go to it, and I was missing out on a good time. So I decided to pile all my student loan into hiring out a nightclub on a Monday night and started a club night called Monday Club. Very original name, I know, but you're going to see there's a progressive showing of me having very unoriginal names when it comes to putting on things. So I started putting on a club night, which led me to putting on gigs, which led me to a career in the music industry for most of my 20s, when I worked in being a festival manager and working various aspects of tour management and event management in kind of that space. And then around 5 or 6 years ago, I had a complete change of what I wanted to do and wanted to work in sustainability, and was really enjoying that job. I run a business called Better Not Stop, and one of the things we do is help businesses of all types become B Corp certified or put sustainable strategies into their business. And I was approached by an old festival client who said, actually, Hannah, we would quite like to be more sustainable as a music festival. Could you come and help us? And could you help us teach our audience how to be more sustainable too? So now we work with music festivals on their impact strategies, and we also run our own conference as a business called the Better Business Summit. See, I told you I was still absolutely terrible with names 20 years later. And something we wanted to do with the summit, which is a conference rather than an outdoor event, is make it one of the most sustainable, impactful things we could do. So there's lots of things that we've shared online when it comes to transparency in ticket price, and also how we make it as accessible as possible, and various different aspects we've looked at in putting together an event. Of actually being someone who's a decision maker there, I was able to make some really big changes and hopefully long term change how other people put on conferences too. So any questions on outdoor events, festivals, probably not club nights because I'm definitely too old to know what's called there, and conferences and sustainability, I'm here to answer any questions, and I'll try and be as honest and helpful as possible. So yeah, that's me.
Amazing. Thanks, Hannah. I can't wait to hear more of your insights a bit later on. And Damien, you've actually run a festival recently. Could you tell us a bit more about that and about Pura Vida, please? Oh, I think you're on mute, Damien.
Sorry for that. Yeah, thank you very much for inviting us here. Yes, we just wrapped up the festival 10 days ago, I think, something like that, I personally joined Pura Vida a year ago almost, I mean, I was in a break between 2 jobs and so on, and I knew one of the founders. And I usually restructure or develop companies, brands, or projects. So since I was I've been studying like lately circular economy, sustainability, and so on. I was very interested, to join them, and I initially joined them as a volunteers last year, and this year was part of the core team. To make to somehow to transform the festival and to make it a little bit more sustainable than it was initially. Although Pura Vida always been with the aim, to be a sustainable festival. As you know, when you start a new festival, it's like very challenging, to make all what you want happen. So this year my role was to develop the sustainability strategy and the operations, and it had been quite interesting and still a little bit challenging. We had some success, that maybe I will talk about later, but have been very fine. So
amazing.
in a nutshell,
For those people watching at home that aren't familiar with Pura Vida Festival and the ethos of it, could you just sort of give a soundbite of what Pura Vida Festival is all about, please?
And basically, we say that we are a platform, and then we call it Pura Vida Festival Retreat. So it's like 3.5 days event happening every June, since this year was the 3rd year. It's a platform to align personal well-being and planetary regeneration. So it's very much about the self, us, the relationships, with others, and our relationship with the planet. So the festival it's very mindfulness, let's say. It's like no alcohol, drugs-free, and fully vegan. So, and we want to, present or show the people, the guests, that we can live in a different way and a sustainable way. So, the whole philosophy and like that, we want to co-create transformational learning journey through workshops, art, music, celebration, and so on. So it's in a nutshell, and it's happening in a natural park, outside of Berlin, 1 hour outside of Berlin. So it's fully immersed in the nature. Yeah.
It looks amazing, and I definitely want to go next year. I'm planning my trip already. Thank you for that, Damien. And a final introduction, who might need not that much of an introduction for most people watching, is Jonny from Ticket Tailor. But Jonny, if you could give a bit more of an intro into who you are and why sustainability is big and important for us here.
Thanks, Rio. Yeah, I'm the only one on the call who's not an event organizer, but hopefully the things that I can talk about will hopefully relate quite well to all the businesses that we're running. I'm CEO and founder of Ticket Tailor. Ticket Tailor's been going a long time. We're an events ticketing platform. We help event organizers sell tickets online, and we've got the privilege of working with many people on this call and all over the world. We've got thousands of customers, predominantly UK, US, but we're global. As I mentioned, we've been going quite a long time. We started in 2010, so we've had quite a long time to kind of think about this kind of stuff. We've been growing slowly over those years. Our mission statement is to empower a diverse range of event creators by making it easy and affordable to sell tickets online for their events. That's what we think about a lot of the time. But what's also really interesting about our business, I think, is actually our vision around growth. In tech, it's all about growth. If you look at anything to do with tech, it will be any tech press, it will be about growth, and it'll be about investment, and it'll be about unicorns and so on. And so, and because software is very scalable, perhaps unlike events software, you can build some software and it can serve thousands of people quite easily. So yeah, for us, we really had to think about growth and what does it mean? Like, is our growth going to be positive or is it going to be negative? And as we're growing as a tech company, we see a lot of negative side effects from growth in big tech. But the way that we framed it is our vision for how we want to grow and how we think about growth in our business is we call it growth on purpose. And the idea is that we want to positively impact the people and planet around us through our growth. So we want an engine that means that as we grow, actually it's designed to create positive impact off the back of that growth. Sustainability is obviously a key part of that. As I mentioned, positively impact people and the planet around us. And we sat down and thought, the reason why we decided on sustainability and is because, well, we sat down and thought, well, what kind of positive impact do we want to have? Like we want to keep this focused, and we want to make sure that we're not just thinking about positive impact and across too broad a spectrum, because we want to really make sure that we can make a difference and feel like that. And planet seemed like a very logical choice for us, A, because it's the most pressing issue of our time, and B, you can't run in-person events without a healthy planet. I mean, it says on Hannah's t-shirt, I think, no music on a dead planet. So it kind of proves the point. And I think the events industry will really feel the effects of climate change with things like extreme weather and pollution. And so it's just, if we want to be getting together in events, then it's important we care about this stuff. Yeah, so it's a little bit about how we think about how we link sustainability in with our growth vision.
Awesome, thanks, Jonny. Hope you made that very clear. I think you made that very clear. But yeah, it's another reason why we're super excited to be doing this today. And I think you've heard from everyone now, and obviously sustainability in the environment and the planet is really important to them. But I have a question for Hannah. I was wondering, how would you recommend event organisers get their community or their ticket buyers engage with that environmental message? If you're doing all these things that are amazing for the planet, how would you share that?
So, I mean, it comes from even the ticket buying process, really, doesn't it? So it's about when people are buying their ticket, do they have an opportunity to donate to charity? Do they have an opportunity to carbon offset their ticket price? Are they being asked to consider how they're going to be getting to the event that you're doing, whether that's by public transport or by car or car sharing? And I think for us, something I always recommend events that I work with do is do a bit of a customer journey. Like, let's imagine from the beginning that your customer has contact with you or wants to decide to go to your event, where are the opportunities for you to talk to them about how they can be more sustainable? So are you being really clear in your website, for example, how they arrive at your event, what the most sustainable way is to get to your event, why it makes sense to potentially go by public transport rather than drive your own car? Are you making it more difficult for them to drive by car? Maybe there's like a car tax or like a carbon tax you charge them when they arrive at your event. And also tell them why you're making decisions at the event. So for an example, we're working with Kendal Calling Music Festival this summer, and we've got a reusable plastic cup scheme. So it's explaining to the audience why that exists, what the opportunities there are to reduce waste and reduce the carbon emissions of the event if we all work together in that way. But probably going a little bit to what Damien was talking about at his event. Events are an opportunity for people to perhaps experience something completely different or view a different way to do things. So there is all the kind of like important but boring things like power usage at your event and how your audience are traveling there. But there's also kind of the more exciting things you can do, which is how can you plant an idea in your audience's head about a different way to be living or a different way to do things. There's a festival here in the UK called Shambhala, and Chris decided at his festival, similar to Damien, he didn't want to serve any meat or dairy at the event, and he just stopped having food traders there that did that. Didn't call it a vegan festival, just said we've decided to stop doing this. We know it's a really easy way for us to reduce our carbon emissions and our impact as a festival. And he did some audience surveying post-event and actually found out, as a result of the audience just not choosing different options over the weekend and being communicated with why those options existed, that a huge majority of his audience post-event had either completely eliminated or massively reduced down their at-home meat and dairy consumption. So that's just one example of how you create an experience at an event or way of doing things can really influence your audience moving forward. So there's the exciting part of telling them what you do as an event to be more sustainable, but also giving your audience an opportunity to see that they can actually do something as well. And I wonder whether Damien, at your event, that's probably happening to the audience that come to yours, that you just don't even know that they're making those slightly more sustainable, ethical decisions based on something they've learned at your event. And that, I think that's where, for me, the exciting bit is they're like foundational we all have to be thinking as event organisers about what we can do to be sustainable. But once we've got all our ducks in a row, how can we make our audience think about what they can be doing as well? Because that's where the kind of real impacts can happen, and that ripple effect of what we're doing could be really huge.
Yeah, that's amazing, and some great tips there. Damien, did you see sort of similar responses from your ticket buyers, do you know?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, from our side, you know, I mean, people are, I mean, when I look at the audience of the guests at our festival, you know, they are very much questioning on the way that we will be living on the planets tomorrow, and this is how they reach us, you know. And when we see the different origin where they are coming from, you know, I mean, or the societal level and things like that, it's very, very interesting to see that it's not only the yogis, you know, or the meditation people that are coming there, you know, there are people coming from fintech, marketing, you know, finance and things like that, you know, and they are ready to have a different experience, you know. I mean, even though they are not vegan, you know, they accept, you know, what we're offering, you know, and it's the whole experience of the festival. So it's and this is why, I mean, I decided to join and to stay on board on the festival on the second year, you know, because it was very, very, you realize that, I mean, it's needed, although it's purely on the volunteer basis that we all work on that festival, but we come back because we know that the people need it, yeah. And wants it, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this sort of brings me on to the next question I was going to ask quite nicely, which you might have alluded to the answer here already, but I suppose, Hannah, in the work that you do with lots of different businesses, do you think that sustainability is becoming more important both to the businesses and, I guess, ticket buyers for events? Yeah. Oh, you're muted.
I think so. I think it's definitely like it's part of that decision buying process of where they're deciding to go, because it's part of that event experience. To be boring about it, you know, businesses exist to be commercial, to make a profit. So businesses are always thinking about that element of putting on your event. You want to do the most sustainable thing, but you also need to make sure your event is making money. So there sometimes has to be some compromises in what you might like to do long term to what you're able to do short term. But from that point of view of does the audience care? Yeah, I think they do. Because at Kendal last year, we had a Leave Nothing But Memories campaign, all about leaving the deer park as you found it. We got everybody involved in it. We told them all the things the festival were doing to try and make it itself more sustainable. But we were also saying how we were trying to make it easier for them to make it more sustainable. So it wasn't just telling our audience that they needed to do things. We were like, okay, we all need to be more sustainable. How can we make that easier for you as an audience? So we were trying to find opportunities to make that easier for the audience members at the event. And as a result of that, we had a really successful campaign because everybody felt part of something bigger than just being kind of asked to do something. So that's a really good way to get your audience kind of along for the ride in those decisions. From a commercial perspective, if there's anyone listening in the audience that works on larger scale events or has opportunities maybe for partnerships, or for example, I'm sure, Mark, you've got a bar at the theatre in, like, who you're going to stock in your bar and things like that, all those kind of commercial partnerships that come along with your business. We're certainly finding, in my experience, that B Corp being one of the many certifications a brand can get, but festivals wanting to work with purpose-driven brands as well, and purpose-driven brands wanting to work with festivals that they can see are doing good. So there's what we call like a mutual co-benefit of festivals doing better generally for people and the planet, but that also makes it, one, more attractive to their customers, because their customers feel more connected to that event because they realize the festival cares about the same things as them. It attracts brands that care about the same thing, so it's a commercial opportunity for that festival to make more money. And in my experience, often it saves the festival money as well. You know, using a music festival as an example creates a lot of waste, which all has to be taken off the site. If that waste is reduced, it's cheaper to take it off the site. So sometimes actually it has all these benefits of, it's good for people and the planet, it makes your audience more loyal, it saves you money because you're thinking about the circular economy of what you're doing. and it opens up to you having commercial partnerships with people that care about the same things as you and attracting the audience that you care about. But I don't know if that's been your experience, Mark, at your theatre in how you choose who you work with.
Absolutely, Hannah. I think I'd make an observation. First of all, I think there's a spectrum. I suspect the people going to your the festival, Damien, and many of the people going to the festivals that you work with, Hannah, are, if I can call it, fully invested in the notion of sustainability and a change in lifestyle and so on. So I won't use the phrase preaching to the converted, but you know, there are people who really buy into that. We at the theatre, we run shows, you know, so people come along for a 2-hour show, be that Shakespeare, be it stand-up comic, be it a music gig. So it's a more discreet thing, and we have you know, a wide spectrum of people of all sorts coming, you know, so there isn't the opportunity to have a really big and powerful sustainability, you know, kind of agenda, but you can do lots of little things like you know, at our bins, you know, we invite our customers to help us separate the waste on the way out. So, you know, it's quite remarkable. We have 8 big bins, you know, 40 gallon drums, and the waste gets separated usually by me the following morning, I have to say, but our audience help, and we separate out cardboard, cans, bottles, and the recyclable glasses that we use. And out of those eight bins, we typically have 1 black poly bag of non-recyclable waste. So to your point, Hannah, if you are careful and if you get your audience to help you, you know, you can actually recycle an awful lot of it, and the volume of true waste, and therefore, you know, environmental damage, you know, going to landfill or whatever, is really minimized. And I think the trick, certainly for us, is to do that not in a preachy way, but, you know, to do it, and you know, you'd be surprised how people buy into that, you know, be they 8 years old or 80, you know, they all, we all want to do the right thing. It's having the ability to do it, and you know, you can lead by example, I think.
Definitely, thank you, Mark. It's kind of great to hear it from both perspectives, from where you have a really engaged audience, and then things that you can do to sort of just make your ticket buyers not even think about sustainability, but have those sustainable practices as they come and enjoy your events, which aren't specifically environmentally focused. Jonny, I kind of wanted to circle back to you and ask if you think there's been more interest from event organisers in sustainability and sustainable practices since the beginning of Ticket Tailor to now. Obviously, it's been a big thing for us as a brand, big part of Ticket Tailor's mission. But do you think that's reflected generally in the rest of the events on our platform and the users we have?
Yeah, I would say so. Not necessarily like 100%. Like not everyone. I mean, as Mark was saying, kind of, it's not, you know, you can't expect everyone to care about the same things that you care about. And I think, Mark, you made a really good point that it's like this, and it's made as well prior to that, about like this is a point for education and a point to kind of almost normalize that this is a big deal, this is a big issue, and it's no longer a question of whether you care about it or not. You're gonna have to you know, you're gonna have to consider environment and sustainability at some point, no matter what you're doing. And so we kind of use that opportunity as well, and you know, whether it's through kind of the things that we talk about in our newsletter, or the kind of charity partners that we work with, basically using the audience we've got, who are who you know, are very busy people trying to get their jobs done. So we don't want to we want to balance it with not being a distraction, but also just yeah, making sure that it's something that we talk about and something that people recognize something important. There's certainly more we can do as well around like how can we help, just like you running this webinar, Rio, how can we as a ticketing platform do more to help make it easier for events to be sustainable, particularly for the people where it's not top of mind for them, and actually, you know, yeah, they're not giving it much headspace. How can we just make it so much easier for them to think about it in a conscious way? I thought it was also really interesting, Hannah, that you mentioned about the businesses like responding to consumer demand, and I think that is really important. I think it's also really important that the way it's done is like basically the owners of the business or the people like who are doing that is like, it's not as a result of actually consumer demand, but as a just authentic, right? Recognizing actually what the consumers care about. And there's obviously a real danger with a lot of businesses that it becomes surface level stuff, but behind the scenes the culture isn't really about that. And so I think the authenticity is so important. And the other benefit, I mean, you also mentioned around like how cyclical it is, how the benefits become bigger the more you do, and I think that's also definitely true in terms of team as well, like hiring and retaining staff. I think that authentic desire to want to be sustainable, all those cyclical benefits don't work if it's not authentic. You just get a very kind of superficial level that can often be seen through. So yeah, I thought some really good, interesting points there that reflect across on our business as well.
Yeah, definitely what you're saying about sort of like retention and how happy people within the business feel, I think reflects with what Damien was saying earlier about Pura Vida Festival and how everyone is a volunteer pretty much that goes into that. So Damien, is there anything like you've been really proud of in your journey with Pura Vida, or that there's something that you're really happy the festival has achieved, or the festival retreat has achieved? Oh, you're muted again, Damien, sorry. Everyone's being very polite and quiet.
Okay. Sorry. So we are pretty much a very young festival, so it was only the third year this year. But when we see the way that we grow, you know, first year we had 200 people, last year 400, this year close to 600. So I mean, it's growing organically and so on. And every year we are learning. And from the last year to this year, since I joined, you know, I was quite happy that we decided to scrap down, you know, things that we thought that we could do it ourselves, you know, and to use maybe the principle of the circular economy by outsourcing people. So, for instance, you know, the glamping area, we decided instead of trying to make money with the glamping ourselves, we decided to outsource the facilities and the tent and things like that. So I didn't have to run this year for pillows and blankets and things like that. So it was quite interesting. We also teamed up through the glamping people, you know, with Utopia, which was an organization recycling the tent that are used in festival or leftover in festival, because very often people go in festival and they don't want to carry anything anymore, you know, there is so many things left over there, you know, and that organization is like recycling those tents, you know, and then re-renting it in a low budget. So we were happy to introduce that you don't have to buy a tent for the festival, you know, people had the possibility to, at a very low cost, you know, I mean, to have their tent set up, you know, they only had to think about coming and then dropping their bags, you know, and enjoying directly the festival. Another thing that we have been very happy also this year is to introduce the eco toilets, because we used to have the plastic cubicles, you know, horrible one and so on, you know, and we decided to to team up, you know, with an organization in Germany called Finizio, and it's basically, their tagline is saying that shit is gold, you know, and basically they are recycling the excrement, you know, and we introduced that to the festival. It was very interesting, and basically the residual and so on, you know, are recycled and turned it into composting. It's been composted. So, although it's 3 times more expensive than a plastical cubicle, and, you know, we really wanted to introduce that this year. So this is the few steps that we already did since last year. And this year we set up the restaurant, ourselves, because last year we had different vendors for the food, or they were also vegan. But I mean, from the feedback from the guests, all of those little vendors were quite pricey. So we decided to run ourselves the restaurant, at a lower price and fully vegan. And it was quite successful this year as well. So I mean, I think that we are arriving closely. I mean, it's not yet fully there, but I mean, we surely are going there. So
awesome. It sounds great, and sounds like you made a lot of positive changes. Mark, did you want to respond to some of those things? Do you also have composting toilets?
Well, yeah, and I wanted to respond to you, Damien. Well done on that. So we've got composting toilets at the theatre. We have 7, and they're actually, I mean, this isn't a discussion about composting loos, but they're really very simple. You dig a hole in the ground and you have a building around it, and in goes everything, and sawdust, and that's a very, sustainable way of doing it. In fact, I think we're going to get on to scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions and so on. And in fact, the only scope 1 emission we have is, as our composts. But, composting toilets are great. They're, clearly very, very sustainable.
Yeah, actually, Mark, it would be great if you wouldn't mind expanding on those scope emissions for people watching at home. So obviously carbon reduction is really important to Thorrington Theatre. Can you let people know sort of what you mean about those scopes and what you do at your theatre to consider all the carbon reductions?
Sure thing. This and correct me if I'm wrong, because scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3, everybody talks about it, and I think I understand it. I might not. Scope 1 is, as a business, your direct greenhouse gas emissions. So if you have a truck, there's a diesel truck, or you have a furnace, or something that uses oil or gas, that's scope 1. And again, for us at the theatre, as I'll explain why, our only scope 1 emissions will be from the composting loos. Scope 2 is indirect greenhouse gas emissions. So if you buy electricity in, then what's the greenhouse gas emission in that power that you're buying in? And for us, we have electricity, but we only buy renewable electricity. So we use electricity for lights and sound at the theatre, for refrigeration in the bar, and for electric buggy that we use to carry things around. So we only use electricity, and therefore we have some scope 2 emissions from electricity. But if you're buying renewable electricity, they should be 0 or very, very low. And I just suggest that people think about, making sure they're using renewable electricity. It often doesn't work out being any more expensive. And then scope 3 is the tricky one. That's things that are indirectly associated with what you do up and down the value chain. So we buy drinks and crisps, and things at the theatre, and loo roll and so on. And then what we do there, and you made this point, Hannah, about people you partner with, we try and buy everything from good, responsible family farms locally, so the miles are as low as possible, and so on. And also down the value chain. So a point you made, Hannah, about, can people come by public transport, or do they drive their own car? Sadly, or not sadly, gladly, we're out in the middle of nowhere, in the woods, and you can't come by public transport. So a small number of people come by bicycle or walk, but the majority are coming by car. And how can we control that? That's a scope 3 emission for us. And what we're doing there Hannah, and I'd welcome any thoughts, but we've got a survey when people buy the ticket. How are you coming and how far will you have driven, to get here? So at least we can begin to get a handle on how big those scope 3 emissions are. I mean, we have last year we had 11,500 visitors and they've all driven to get there. So, there's quite a lot of driving involved. I'm very interested by something, I forget whether it was you, Hannah, or you, Jonny, said, but on the Ticket Tailor website, is there an option where we could have people say, oh yeah, I'm coming by car and I'd like to offset my emissions and, pay an extra 20p or whatever, and that could then go to, is there an option for that, Jonny?
There isn't at the moment, and that's definitely one of the things that we are looking into, is talking with 3 different potential partners on this area, because it does feel like a real to make that easy for people just seems like something we should do.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head, if I may say, Jonny, that my view is more and more people want to do the right thing in terms of sustainability, and if we as people supplying them in this case with events, but with whatever, if we can make it easy for people to do the sustainable thing, I think we'll find more people do it. So please, Jonny, sign us up as a customer event for that option when it's available, and I bet a fair number of our customers will tick that box, to be able to do the right thing. So all these are great ideas.
Hannah, did you want to add something?
Yeah, one of the things we do at Better Not Stop is we provide carbon literacy training. So when you were then talking, Mark, you were like scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. So for anyone on the call that is like, what are they talking about there? I think you did describe it very well, Mark, but ultimately what we're talking about is when we're talking about business carbon emissions or event carbon emissions, not every carbon emission is the same, because there's some stuff that we can control as business owners, and there's other stuff, like Mark was saying, he can't tell his audience that they all have to bike to his events, so he doesn't really have any control over what car they drive or whether they drive electric cars or whatever. But there are, again, we talked about before, co-benefits, opportunities for us as event organizers of, is there potentially a commercial opportunity there for you, Mark, if everyone needs to arrive at a certain time and 50% of your audience usually come from a particular town or village, or there's almost like a shuttle bus that could be run, that could become an income generating thing for the event, plus also reduce the carbon emissions down. It's like a win-win. So I'm always, and
you've hit the nail on the head there. And one thing we'd love to have is, and maybe a Ticket Tailor would be in a position to do this, but you've got people buying tickets for an event, be that at the O2 or be that at Thorrington Theatre. Could there be something where you, as you buy the ticket, you tick a box that says, oh, I'd be interested in carpooling if that's possible, and then maybe there's some way of connecting people who are going to see the Rolling Stones at the O2, or go to Damien's festival, or come to the theatre to actually hook up with people. Oh, I'm coming from Norwich, we can carpool. Is that a
We did a trial actually with a company last year whereby you could find public transport options to get to the event, and then there would be perks based on if you opted to take the public transport. So when you got there, like maybe you got a glass of champagne because you took the train. So that kind of, incentivizing, that idea is great, of incentivizing people to really think about how they're getting there and trying to make it more efficient.
Yeah, there's a few car share websites that you can just share also on your website to say, if you're driving, use this site, and then other people can find you, that exists. So I think it's us as event organisers thinking, how can we signpost our audience to the most sustainable options or ideas? And I think that's just something we need to think about, is we need to make it easy affordable or cool for our audience. If it's all three of those things, they're definitely going to do it. But if it's at least two of those things, it's enough of a carrot for the audience member to make that decision. So I think it goes back to what Rio was saying before, is like, how do you talk to your audience before they even come to an event that you're doing, of how you're making it easy for them to make sustainable decisions, or how you've made decisions as an event, so that when they arrive at your event, it's easy for them to make those sustainable choices. And similar to what Damien was saying about his event is all vegan, he makes that very easy for his audience to make that sustainable decision, because it's the option there for them. So it's the easiest thing for them to do. So sometimes people think it's taking away sustainability, or they also see it as, oh, I don't have time, or it's more expensive to be sustainable. But actually, I find it's just doing more in the pre-planning of your event to actually make your event run smoother and easier. It's just kind of approaching the way in which you put on your event in just a slightly different way.
Thanks, Hannah. That's really great tips there. I just want to pass back over to Damien now, if I may, if you have anything to comment around carbon offsets, or if not, is there anything that you'd recommend other event organisers could implement if they've started thinking about sustainability or ways to make their events a little bit more sustainable?
Well, good question. I mean, it's about questioning, questioning where you want to be, and what you want to do and how you can do it. And I know that my roles at the moment in the festival, it's being the devil advocate, and from production side and so on, I'm always questioning, is it sustainable, yes or not? And it comes from the preparation, like Anna said, if you manage to prepare ahead, you can save a lot of money, I think, and a lot of time as well, and become more sustainable. So, for example, as this year, we needed like building materials, to create like some kiosks and so on. We need like some wood, and we wanted rough wood. And one choice that we did, is to, our production manager associated with 2 other festivals, and they buy the material, the raw material they needed to build up the kiosk, and different thing, together. And then we are sharing this product, through different festivals. So I think that the main thing is like, remove waste, and to make sure that you're not creating an extra waste on the planet, and find a way, to build the festival, by using material that is available on the site. For example, where we are, there is like the property that we are renting from, he has a backyard, with a lot of wood. So we ask him to borrow the wood to build up also part of our elements, it's and then we return it to him, when we finish, when we dismantle everything, and we return it to the guys. So we didn't have to buy those materials. So, but yeah, my biggest thing is like questioning all the time, using somehow the principle of the circular economy, make sure that you don't extract resources from the planet, and to create more waste. And how do you do that? So this is what I would recommend by starting doing it. So.
I love that tip as well, to sort of like share resources with similar events. I haven't heard that one before, and I think that makes loads of sense, especially if you're running events that happen once a year or every few months. That's a really great idea. And Mark, is there anything that you'd recommend other event organisers do, maybe that works really well for you at Thorrington?
I think it in a sense, Damien, hit the nail on the head in terms of keep thinking about it. And I think the scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 framework is one that's used. And the nice thing about it is you can use it to structure your thinking. Do you know what I mean? And you can't reduce your greenhouse gas emissions until you know what they are. So try and understand what the impact and the emissions from your event or from your business are, and then you can think about, where are the big ones and what are the ones you can influence, and that is a way to, tread as lightly as you can.
Thanks, Mark. That's really great advice. Sort of, we touched on it briefly before, but I think some people watching might be thinking about changing things and implementing new practices after this discussion. I hope they are. And I wondered if anyone has any tips about how to balance your profitability with those planet saving initiatives, I guess. Jonny, have you got any tips? It's something obviously that we think about a lot at Ticket Tailor.
Yeah, so we had a bit of a watershed moment a couple of years ago when we were kind of coming out of COVID and the business was getting back on track, you know, after a difficult time, and we were growing, but actually I was feeling less motivated. Like we were getting into a much more kind of safe place as a business, but my motivation was going down because the purpose just wasn't clear. And so that's when we were like, okay, well, how do we think we're about a business about doing for good, but about a business for good, but what does that really mean, and what are we actually going to do, and how do we build that into our business model as well? So the thing that a couple of things we decided, one is let's buy carbon removals and start measuring and start kind of taking responsibility for that. And there's a good question that's come up in the chat about is kind of doing that kind of goes against the spirit of sustainability, the fact you can just buy your way out. And I totally agree with that. And I think that kind of comes back to that point of being authentic about this and, really trying to, do the right thing. And so we've built in buying carbon removals that, we've clued ourselves up on and worked with a company that, know what they're talking about, and we believe that they say what they're doing. So we've built that now into cost of business, and that's just something we do. And then the other thing is we decided to link in every ticket we sell, we donate a penny to climate causes. And then we're like, okay, well, how do we make sure that money we're donating to climate causes actually has an impact, actually makes a difference? And so we set up this criteria of how we're gonna use this money, and we've partnered with 3 charities so far, and all those charities are around either restoring nature or protecting nature. Just because in a kind of such a complex world where we're not climate experts, where we want to be confident that the money that we're donating is actually going to make a difference. Nature feels like I don't know, I'd be pretty confident to say if we can bring back more nature or we can restore more nature, it's pretty good. It's been pretty good at balancing the world before it started unbalancing itself due to our activity. That seems like a pretty safe bet. So we work with Ocean Conservation Trust and Cumbria Wildlife Trust and Rainforest Protection UK. And as I said, for every ticket we sell, we donate a penny. And then finally, the other thing we do is just like we're a certified B Corp, and that helps us hold ourselves accountable kind of externally, so that we're not just thinking, we're doing great. It actually makes us think about all the different aspects of sustainability and assess ourselves on those in a really kind of transparent and detailed way, that stuff that we wouldn't have even thought about. And same with the company that we use for our carbon removals, challenging us to get to net zero, and what our strategy is for that as well. So those kind of external accountability things are really important, so that you don't just feel like you're doing good and then actually, but there's a whole load of stuff that you're not experts about internally.
Thanks, Jonny. And I want to pass the same question over to Hannah, if I may. How do you sort of think about balancing the planet with profits?
Well, I mean, I think it's just you'll get left behind as a business if you're not future thinking. We're on a planet with finite resources, so we've got to all become more sustainable to have a prosperous future. Going back to the question that Jonny was answering for Matt, we do need to change behaviours of our audience. It's going back to, yes, we need to make changes as event organisers and people in the industry, but we've got this real opportunity to change our audience behaviour. at the Better Business Summit, as an example, I've got we've got 350 purpose-driven business leaders, many working in B Corps or companies that already have social and environmental goals through them in the same way that Ticket Tailor does. So there's an expectation from them that we're doing all the sustainable things at our event anyway. And actually, if we weren't, we'd be vilified, we'd be really in a lot of problem. We actually ran a huge mistake we made, is we had to change our after party venue because it was so busy, and I turned up and everyone was drinking out of single-use plastic cups, and I thought, God, if this is the worst event this could have happened at, this is what happened at ours. But it was an honest mistake and we learned from it, and we won't do that again. But that audience, there's an expectation for them in audience behavior changes. They know the sustainable stuff. So how do we make them become activists and actually go forward in their own life and change the behavior in their businesses and their professional and personal life? At festivals that we work at, like Kendall Calling, actually this conversation we're having with those people is a very different conversation. Sustainability, they might not understand what that word means. The majority of people won't understand the difference between scope 1, 2 and 3 emissions. And actually the conversation we're having with that audience is around waste reduction, looking after the natural environment. So it's thinking about what story are you trying to tell to your audience, and what story will your audience connect with? Because the facts are there. We're in a climate emergency. The fact is there is one planet, unless I know someone here on the call knows something I don't, that we found somewhere else that we can live in. We all know there's finite resources, but it's the emotional connection that we have with our audience. So how can you speak to your audience on an emotional level that makes sense to them and makes sense to your event, to help them come along on this sustainability journey with you? And for those areas where you mess up, or you're not in a financial position or resource position, because perhaps like Damien's festival or event, it's volunteer led, how can you just be, like Jonny was saying, honest, transparent, take your audience on that journey with you, and perhaps get crowdsource ideas and thoughts from your audience about how that can happen? I think that's really good ways to do it.
Yeah, really great tips. Thank you so much, Hannah. And thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts. We've only got 4 minutes left. We've had some great questions in the chat. So what we'll do is answer those in the follow-up email where we send the recording, if anyone has insights to share. But just before we go, I was hoping that everyone could just share one key takeaway that you'd like to give to the event organisers listening. Just like, if there was one message you'd want to share from your experiences of running events. Mark, would you like to go first?
Absolutely. There's an old saying, what gets measured gets managed. So try and measure your carbon and other greenhouse gas emissions, and then you can start to measure it and do the right thing. Amazing, thank you. And Damien, what would you pass on to everyone at home?
I think sustainability should be the new normal. So, I mean, in whatever business that exists now on the planet. So, I mean, go for it, and be brave enough, to go through it. So it's what I would say, and keep questioning how you can make it better.
Love that. Thank you. Hannah, do you have a final takeaway? You've shared a lot of great stuff. You're muted, Hannah. Sorry.
There's a great website called Vision 2025 who are putting together something called the Green Events Code, which has tons of actual actionable signposted tools and resources if you want to get into the nitty gritty. But remind yourself, you just do what you can with what you have when you can. We can't all do everything. So focus on the areas that are important to you and your audience, and make sure there is an emotional connection in whatever you do, and you'll be doing a great job just doing that.
Thank you, Hannah. And Jonny, a final tip from you.
Yeah, I definitely echo that. That authentic kind of caring about it. It's an overwhelming space with so much information, and it's not a case of waiting to feel like you're an expert to start making change. It's like start making change and start caring and keep questioning, as Damien was saying. Another thing I saw the other day, there's a tool called Future Festival Tools, which provides a self-assessment tool, a course, and some case studies for kind of getting up to speed and on a whole bunch of stuff around festivals in particular, but there's similar tools as well for other event industries as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonny, and thank you everyone for taking an hour out of your day to have this conversation or listening at home. It's been really great. I've learned loads. I hope everyone watching is really inspired. And yeah, let's keep putting on events and changing the planet. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Take care.